somebody said the football's a matter of life and death to you, I said, listen, it's more important than that. I used to work in the pit as a boy of 14.
Brought up in a faith which was football.
I wanted to be a manager. I was hell-bent in that.
Stein, Shankly and Busby went straight in to harness the power of the community.
We had a poor team. I came here because of the people.
I like to be manager of Celtic. I like the people who support us.
He made you believe you were something special.
When a manager does this, it bound them together.
I've never seen anything like this crowd.
That's my sole aim, to give them something worth seeing, to get them success.
You play a football match without fans, you've got nothing.
And I put everything into it I could, all my heart and soul.
The public don't ever realise what a manager suffers.
To rebuild, that was such an extraordinary thing in every way.
Can Celtic become the first non-Latin team to win the European Cup?
And they said, Jock, you're immortal now.
Everybody was desperate for United to win. The team had died trying to win it.
That's where the heart of Liverpool football beats.
Bill Shankly brought life back to Merseyside.
This is the man they love.
What does this club of yours mean to you?
It means everything.
Mark Busby, one of the most remarkable men that's ever been in the game.
I've drummed it into our players that they are privileged to play for you. And if they didn't believe me, they believe me now.
Yes, here we go. We've got the one and only Jonny Owen. What a guy. He's the director of the new feature-length film, The Three Kings. Jonny, I need to tell you, man, you were part of my childhood. I used to stay up late to watch Shameless. Absolutely loved it. And you were tremendous in it. Were they good days?
Yeah, I was brilliant, mate. I tell you what, a lot of the cast and the way they were weren't very far away from the characters they played. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Did you get a booze in that?
Yeah. Have a beer and that. You know what I mean? As soon as they finished, it was like straight out to everybody. It was a great time. Great time to be in Manchester as well.
Frank Gallagher was a legend, wasn't he?
Yeah. It's quite funny when I first went there, when I got the part, there was this wig on like a head, on a polystyrene head as I walked in, and I was like, there's the wig. And then he comes in and he's very well spoken. Hello, how are you? And then
is he?
Yeah. And then when he goes into the party, he's like, all right, mate, how's it going? Nice one, yeah, buzzing. And he's all that mank talk, do you know what I mean? But yeah, great actor.
Mate, the reason I liked him so much was he was the double of my dad, eh? My dad's the exact same as Frank Gallagher, man.
Was he? Aye.
And you were gay in it, weren't you?
Was, yeah. I was gay in it. I was with Mickey, who was a really popular character. And whenever I go to Manchester or Liverpool, people always say, are you the Welsh busy? The gay one? I'm like, yeah. Oh, I like you, pal. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. Kiss a kiss. I'm like, yeah. I was only acting. You're all right.
Mate, another thing I need to thank you for as well is your missus, Vicky McClure. Lol, This Is England, mate. I've had this haircut ever since I seen Lol and This Is England. I used to play for Swindon, right? And when This Was England was out, I took a picture of her into the barber and said, give me that. Remember the quiff?
Yes, I do.
Mate, she was iconic in that, eh?
Yeah, brilliant. She won a BAFTA for that as well. And like that kind of set it off then really on her career. Do you know what I mean? So she's done brilliant. So dead proud of her. Like, you know what I mean? She's a copper now though. She's a policeman in line of duty. So she's over in Belfast filming.
How did you meet?
How did what?
How did you meet?
So I met her on a set of a film. We did a film together called Svengali. And she was in it and I was in it. And we just... she just wouldn't stop pestering me, mithering me to go out with her. Do you know what I mean? You know what it's like. So in the end, I went, I go on then. So we ended up together.
Amazing. And her co-star, Martin Compston as well. Have you managed to get a beer with him? Because he loves a beer, he loves a drink, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's a good lad. I went to his wedding, which he booked right in the middle of the Euros because Scotland didn't qualify and Wales did. So I had to fly back for his wedding and fly back out again. But he's a top lad, Martin. He's a good lad.
He was telling me that when you went to the Euros, Vicky couldn't get in touch with you. She thought you went missing. Was it a good time?
I was out there for 5 weeks in the end. She was
5 weeks?
Aye. So I went over there and I said to her, oh, look, Wales won't get out of the group, so it'll be all right. I'll be back in a week. And obviously we get to the semi-final, so I'm out there for weeks. It was brilliant. But she was good as gold. I used to ring her up and go, I need to get down to Lyon. Can you book me an hotel? And she'd go, all right, I'll get you in somewhere. And then she texted me the name of the hotel as I was driving down on the train. She was good as gold.
Did you ever get to go with any of the players or the manager or that?
Aye. Seen him all. I did a film about it, see, for Wales called Don't Take Me Home. So
right.
I seen a lot of them, and I stayed in the hotel with them once or twice. But I did it mostly with my mates. I wanted to do it with the boys. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the first time we qualified for years, so I wanted to go with the lads and have a laugh.
Because we interviewed Joe Ledley, and he said that the Wales camp was like a stag do. Did you get to see much of that?
I did, yeah. It was amazing. They were like on holiday. They were loving it. And that's why I think they played so well, because they didn't want to go home, because they were loving it so much. They'd play the match and they'd go. And Joe's a good lad anyway. He's a good laugh, Joe. And they all had a massive table tennis competition, didn't they? And it got really serious. So they were all like, every day I'd be like going, how do you get on it? I'm playing the gaffer today and all that. But they were all best mates. Do you know what I mean? They were all like best pals. So it's the best way, I think, for the team when you get on like that.
Chris Coleman's meant to be a top man as well, isn't he?
Brilliant guy. One of the lads. Do you know what I mean? Likes a pint, great crack. And what they did was as well, they encouraged the fans to go to the hotel. So you could go there and the team would all be there and that. So everybody was talking to him and all that. It was brilliant.
Amazing times, mate. Amazing times. Right, the Three Kings. How did you get into this? Was it your idea?
It was, yeah. Yeah, there was a great series about 25 years ago now by a Scottish journalist called Hugh McIlvenney called The Football Men.
What a voice he's got.
Amazing. So he did this series called The Football Men, which is about them. But then my father was always saying about like miners, because my old man had worked underground, and then he was always pointing out Shankly, Stein and Busby. And then when my old man died in 2017, and I thought I'd like to do something about those kind of blokes and the effect they had on football and how important they were to British and world football and how important Scotland was. So I took it to this company who did like Senna and Amy, and they really liked the idea as well. And that's how we ended up making it.
And the fact that you're a massive football fan, is it Nottingham Forest that's your team?
No, I grew up watching Cardiff City and Merthyr. And what happened was when I went with Vicky, so I moved to Nottingham, right?
Right.
And then I ended up making a film in Nottingham about the great Nottingham Forest team in the late 70s who won the European Cup and all that. And then the new owners came in and they liked it. And they said to me, do you want to come work for us? And I was a bit like, all right. So I ended up working at Forest. So that's where I am now, really, doing some work for them as well as the films. So it's brilliant, really. And then that film did really well. And then I did the Wales one. And then that's how I ended up doing this film as well. But I've always been a big fan of Scottish football, see. People where does that come from? So what happened was, when I was about 17, 18, where I come from, Merthyr, we had a magazine, like a fanzine called Dial for Merthyr. And then they got really pally with Queen's Park, who had a fanzine called The Spider's Web. So we did like an exchange visit. So we went to stay in Glasgow, and they came down to stay in Merthyr. And the lad I stayed with, Dizzy, Kevin, was a big Celtic fan as well. He lived in Jock Stein's old house.
No way.
Yeah, in King's Park. So he used to take me to games. So I used to go and watch Queen's Park, and I went to watch Celtic, and he took me to see Partick Thistle. So I went to see loads of games up there, and I've been doing the same ever since. So once or twice a year, I always come up to Scotland and watch football. I love football up in Scotland because everybody has a pint, and it's always a good atmosphere. I think it's becoming quite trendy now. I hear people going up to Scotland quite a bit to watch matches. I think it's going to become the next Germany. Do you know what I mean? Fans coming up for a weekend and watching games. But it's still a brilliant day out watching Scottish football. I love it.
Can you remember your favourite game that you've came up and seen?
I seen an Old Firm game, but Celtic didn't win that one. That was the days when Rangers were pretty good.
How did you find the atmosphere in that?
Best atmosphere I've ever been in a football.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Amazing. I mean, I say to everybody, you should try one before you go. And I know it's got its dark side and all that, but that's what makes it sexy. The atmosphere was incredible. So I was a bit like, I was smitten after that. I tell you what, I went down to Annan with Queen.
Oh, what a show!
Brilliant. What a day out.
No, it's not.
Buckfast on the train, right? See?
Yes.
Bureau, went to the game, few pints, same on the way back, got back to Glasgow by about 10 o'clock. What a day out, Annan. So yeah.
Can you remember who Annan were playing?
Queen's Park.
Oh, Queen's Park, right?
I went down from Glasgow with them all.
I was in Annan's league last year. I'm still playing. I play for Peterhead.
Do you?
I play for Peterhead, so Annan's like the dreaded away trip, man. But you loved it.
Because it's so far south, isn't it?
So far south, mate. So far south. Hate it. I was going to say to you,
go on.
I watched your Nottingham Forest documentary. It's on Sky Documentaries just now. I believe in miracles.
That's it, yeah.
Mate, amazing. Even that Forest team, such a strong Scottish contingent as well, didn't it?
Massive. All the big English teams at that time were brilliant. Had a Scottish spine, you know. Liverpool had Dalglish and Souness and Hansen, and Forest had McGovern, Burns, Robertson was their best player. Great team. So they all had 4 or 5. Same Man United, Macari, Buchan, McQueen. So that's why I wanted to make this film, because I was a bit like, when I was a kid growing up, all the best managers were Scottish, and loads of the teams had Scottish players, and people have forgotten it a little bit because of the money that's gone into the Premier League game. You get loads of players from Europe and all over the world. But, even now, you get an Andy Robertson or something like that. I still like the fact you get Forest to just signed Scott McKenna. And he's the best signing of the last window. It's been brilliant for us.
You must be absolutely hopeless then if he's your best signing.
My mate said this in Scotland. He was really good. He's
good. He is good. See, when you're making that documentary, Johnny, what's your favourite Brian Clough story?
Right, let's think. There's loads. He was playing in Cologne, right, and they were 1-0 down. Well, it was 3-3, sorry, from the first game, and all the boys are lining up. Robbo tells us, and they're all quiet, standing there in Cologne, sorry. And the Cologne team come out. They're all massive Germans, right, and they're all singing. And he says that they greased themselves up. They all got blonde hair. So it's really some old sort of German war song, and you can go, Vosh, wah. And so we're all standing there, we're all shapes and sizes. And as they come out, he said they look really proud. Cloughy turns to them all and he goes, "Look at them boys, they're fucking shitting themselves." And he said, we all burst out laughing because it was obvious they weren't. But he said they looked at us laughing as if to say, "What's going on here?" And he said it was the best thing anybody could have said. And Forest won the game 1-0.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Was Clough a miner? Was his family miners as well?
No, he was from Middlesbrough.
Middlesbrough, yeah.
Yeah, his family were more they got that big works there, the ICI works, isn't that big chemical factory. I think they were in that kind of work more than anything. I know that Bobby Robson was a miner. He was underground for a little bit, and obviously and there was a few others as well. Oh yeah, Herbert Chapman, who was the guy behind Arsenal. People say he was from mining background as well, up in Huddersfield way. So yeah, it's quite a few actually. But Stein, Shankly and Busby were the 3 because they worked underground as well. Do you know what I mean?
My favourite bit about that documentary was Brian Clough used to call John Robertson, was it the fat little winger he used to call him?
Give it to the fat lad because he can play and you can't. That's what he used to say to the centre half. You head the ball, you kick the ball, and if you get time with the ball in your feet, give it to John Robertson. That's brilliant. And there's a great story about him half time. They go, they come in and they're about 1-0 down somewhere. It's quite rare, and he gets them all in, and they're all in a big thing. And Robbo goes off for a cigarette in the toilet cubicle, and he goes, "Second half, it's really important that we play together as a team. I never believe a team is about one man. It's a team. We're socialists. We look after each other. We're all about being together." And somebody goes, "Hang on, boss. Robbo's in there having a fag. He's a genius. He can do what he wants. But the rest of us, what we've got to do."
That's amazing.
I know. He's a genius. He can do it. And Robbo, what a player. So Forest fans, they always vote him their favourite player of all time and all that. He always wins the polls by miles. He still lives here. He's still got a really strong Glaswegian accent. He's still in the town. And he's treated like a prince, like a god. Yeah. And if you say to him, "Are you the best player from where you come from?" he always goes, No, I'm the second best player from View Park. And I always go, Jimmy Johnson. He always says, "I'm the second best player to come from View Park." It's brilliant, isn't it? He still says that.
Johnny, John Robertson was, I was a young kid at Celtic coming through. John Robertson was the assistant manager of the first team at the time.
That's right, with Martin O'Neill.
And he still used to join in training. And I'm talking with guys like Larson, Sutton, and he was unbelievable. And he would smoke on the side of the pitch. Yeah. He would join in. He would be, what a player he was, eh?
I know. I as a boy back home in Wales, Kevin Rogers, who played for Merthyr, but he played for Birmingham and Villa. And he said he played for Birmingham against Robbo in Forest. And he said he's the best player I ever played against. He said every ball was pinpoint in. Every ball. He said I just couldn't get my head around it. Every time it got to him, it just went right to somebody's head. He said he was the best player he ever played against. He was brilliant. What a player.
But Martin O'Neill, he had a love-hate relationship with Clough, didn't he?
Yeah. Clough used to say a great thing. He says, Robbo doesn't know how good he is. right? Martin thinks he's better than what he is. So I got to bring him down a peg or two, and I got to bring him up a peg. So it's just like, you know, but they were great together. It's interesting with Martin. Martin's such a brilliant manager, but since Robbo and him, because Robbo's health failed a little bit, Martin's never quite been as good as he was when they were together, because I think together as management, they was sensational.
But it was similar with Clough and Taylor, wasn't it? Clough wasn't as good as Taylor, which is strange. Strange connection, isn't it?
Aye, it's kind of like they need each other, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's really important, because Robbo he knows a player. I've watched some Forest matches with him. It's hilarious. He said to me once, he was watching something, and he was like watching a game, and he went, "The right back's getting killed." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Watch now." So the right back was, and I was like, "Oh yeah." And with about 20 minutes later, they moved the game. They put the right off, moved back, and it was like 20 minutes after Robbo had said it. 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "How did he notice that?" He went, "I could just see the lad's getting killed." I was like, yeah. So you watch a match with him, I think he thinks about the game in a way that it's like, it's unique to that brain. Like, do you know what I mean? So you and him pally now, Johnny? Do you hang about together? Say it again. Are you and Robbo pally now? Are you friends? I see him every Thursday for a pint. And no way. Yeah, and he was going to come up with a film. I can't believe they shut the cinemas. So he goes to the local pub, right? And he's a god. I always call him the Prince of the City. Everybody's like, Robbo. Yeah. And he's the only bloke I know, right? He sings when he has a few drinks. He can't stop singing, right? He starts singing in a bar in the afternoon, and everybody sings along, and the barmaids are clapping. Oh, it's Robbo. He can just do what he wants. Amazing, man. You know, yeah. He's just. Mate, could you try and get me an interview for us? I would love to interview him. Aye, I will. He'll come on. If I say to him, I'll come on, I'll sit with him. He'd love it, because I'll just sit to the side and set him up. Oh, he's brilliant. Oh, perfect, mate. Yeah. Does he see on a Thursday when you meet him for a pint? Is it always football chat? Aye. I just let him talk, let him tell me stuff, because he knows so much about the game and that. You know what I mean? He tells me stories and all the rest of it. I just sit there and just go on, Robbo, carry on. Do you know what I mean? Amazing. But he's got sorry, on you go. Go on. He's got a really keen mind. Go, sorry. He's just got a really keen mind, but he loves his music, see? Loves his music, loves his films, does good impressions. He's got loads of jokes. He's always got a new joke for you. And then, so he's just great company. He's a legend. Amazing. One last guy I wanted to ask you about, because he was my youth team manager at Scotland as well, Archie Gemmell. Oh, yeah. Because he went from being player, falling out with Clough, to then being his coach, didn't he? Yeah, they fell out over the European Cup final because Clough didn't pick him. They didn't speak for about 2 or 3 years, but in the end, Clough got him back as assistant coach, and they're still there. He's funny. He's a proper little nippy Scotsman, you know. But the thing is with him, because he's quite serious, you know, surly, but he loves my missus because he loves line of duty. So whenever I turn up with her, he's straight on to her. What's up? It's brilliant. So Rob was always like, he's after your missus again. I'm like, yeah, I know. Brilliant. My manager played for Forest, Peterhead, Jim McInally. Do you remember him now? Yeah, I do, yeah. So he was a player when Archie Gemmell was a coach. That's, and he said Clough would always come late. He said, so Archie would be up at the training ground. He'd be setting hundreds of cones up, like 30 minutes to set up a proper session. The boys would start it. Clough would walk up with his dog and he would say, fucking forget that, Archie. Pick all those fucking cones up. We're going for a walk. And the boys would just have to leave Archie's training session and go for a walk with Brian Clough. Yeah, he was unbelievable for it. Archie, don't leave those cones. And he'd take them down the Trent embankment for a coffee. So the players loved him. And he used to work, do you know what I mean? Because they'd go score, you know, he's a bit of a madman. But he was a massive believer, Robbo said, in rest, not overtraining. So he said we were always really like busting to play on a Saturday because he just didn't overtrain us. He was a genius, really, Clough was. He was a clever man, like, do you know what I mean? See, they four, as in Clough, Shankly, Busby, Stein, do you think they'd have been able to adapt to modern football today? I think so. I think it's like footballers, do you know what I mean? People go like, what would Robbo be like in the modern game? Well, you go, well, for as much as you think Robbo was, you know, playing at a different time, he now would be better protected, the pitches would be better. So I just think that they'd be all right, you know what I mean? They'd adapt. I mean, especially Clough and Shankly, they'd be brilliant with cameras because they like performing anyway. So they'd been fine with modern media. And Stein was great because Stein was just like quite grumpy and would have like avoided as much as he possibly could. And Busby was like, you know, Busby started it all really with the Babes, you know, the idea of speaking to the press as much as you can. I think they'd have been geniuses, whatever era they were from or in. Do you think Sir Alex Ferguson was like the last of that breed? Are they sort of people that were managers yet? I do, yeah. Because when I grew up, like, it was a cliche, but it was a cliche because it was true that the Scots produced the best managers. And Ferguson was definitely the last one in that great line of who came from industrial Scotland, you know, who worked when they were young, knew the game inside out, and, you know, had massive respect. You know, there's Alex Neil, who's done a good job at Preston, but there's nobody of the stature of Ferguson, who's the most famous manager in football, like that anymore. Hopefully in time, you know, you'll get a few more.
Shankly also.
I don't know, it's tough, innit? I mean, I hope the big thing with Scotland is, I love the Scots for this, right? Wales are crap for years, right? And then we finally qualify, and now we're like, yeah. But my mates in Scotland are like, we're shite at international football. I'm like, no, you'll be fine. And then when you won the other week, I was like, get in. I really need to qualify for a tournament. If Scotland qualified for a tournament, it'd be massive, because the support is fantastic. So it'll be a great boost for the tournament, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. It just needs to get over the line and get back to a major tournament. If that happens, I'm hoping that Scotland could sort of, like, you know, recover in some way, because it's been a shame the last sort of decade or two where everybody's felt as if the national team are not, you know, up to scratch. Because when I was a kid in the late 70s, Scotland had one of the best teams in Europe at that time. You know, they were always qualifying for tournaments and you know, always beating Wales to do it.
Yeah. See, just talking of the film, what did you learn about the three men that you never knew before? I'll tell you what I learned. I cannot believe that Matt Busby picked Bill Shankly for the Liverpool job. That blows my mind, eh?
Yeah, that was one of the things I couldn't believe as well. That was why I really thought I got an interesting film here. Especially when you think he knew he'd be a great rival to him. I thought, what a man to do that, innit? You know what I mean? To think, because he's my mate, I want him doing that. Do you know what I mean? I love that that he did that. I love the fact that I found out they were such good mates. So Shankly was always going over to Manchester and back and forth. And Stein could get from Glasgow to Anfield in 3 hours flat. And they used to have a place for him so he could come down to see a match and all the rest of it. And I never realised Celtic won every trophy available to them in 1967. One of the only clubs ever to do that. So they won even the Glasgow Cup. And the most difficult trophy in the world to win domestically is the European Cup, Champions League. Still is, right? And they won that as well. So it's a bit like, I never knew that Celtic and what he did that season was so unbelievable. That he won every single tournament or league available to him. I don't think that'll ever happen again. Unbelievable, really, when you think about it, isn't it? And
the fact that Busby went to the final, didn't he? Sorry, I keep getting them mixed up. Shankly went to the final.
Of course he did. You know what I mean? He was like, I was there. And to give us the great line, you know, you're immortal now, John, as he calls him, you know, and he comes out of the bath and that. But yeah, it was like, and the support Celtic had, you know, they took terrific support, you know what I mean? They took something like 16,000. No, I mean, Portugal then was a really weird country run by a right-wing junta, shut off really from the rest of Europe. To take that amount of people in 1967, and you could see them driving by car and going in ferries and ships. Unbelievable, really, you know what I mean? And then when you watch the crowds in Glasgow when they come back, and in Liverpool when they win the Cup, and United, everybody thinks it's a modern thing when you see massive crowds, but it was the same then. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and that's why the start of the film, I wanted to say about the importance of football in Scotland's history, where record crowds were always broken in Glasgow. You know, it took off in a way there, was unrivaled in the world. Probably the only place that's come close was South America in the early 50s, but nowhere did football take off like it did in Scotland. And the way they played, that English historian says, English football was based on a village-to-village thing. We know everybody fights in the street and then throws a ball at the end. Whereas in Scotland, they've started the passing game. They started playing, and that was where the game changed. And I wanted to tell a new generation. I wanted to tell 18-year-olds now who were like a bit dismissive about football and Scottish football. Well, actually, this is where they started.
So all that English started football was a load of shite,
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, you know, listen, Paddy Barclay does a great article about that, about the way we play football was born in modern Scotland, you know, where the crowds were, the size of the grounds. The smallest ground in Glasgow, the third biggest ground in Glasgow was Celtic Park at one point, and I held 85,000, you know, so it was about like the way football was embraced. So the point of the film was, there's a reason why the three men come from the same area and the same industry, is because there was a furnace of what football was becoming in Scotland. People were obsessed by it. Alex James, right, who was the most famous footballer in Britain in the 20s, lived one street away from Matt Busby. That's like Lionel Messi living in the street next to you. Do you know what I mean? Wow. So they were born with football all around them, and they were obsessed with it. And like Ferguson says Stein would just talk about football over and over and over. So I just think it's really interesting that they came from an area where everybody was absolutely obsessed with the game.
Amazing. See, Shankly and Busby, what team did they support? Scottish team, do you know?
Yeah, so Busby, you laugh at this, Busby was a Celtic fan.
Right.
Shankly, this made me roll off it, was a Celtic and Rangers fan. Of course he was. He just used to like to watch football. He didn't care. Just went to watch football, and you go, well, of course Bill did, because he's just obsessed with the game. Do you know what I mean? So that's just what they are. Stein obviously grew up as a Rangers fan, which is fascinating. You know what I mean? So I love all those stories. And what happened with Busby was, Busby gets, he's playing for, what's the name of this? There's a team called something Hibernian, like a Scottish town. And he's...
Dundee Hibernian.
That's it. So he's scouted by Manchester City. But he doesn't want to go because he's quite homesick. And what happens is Celtic tried to sign him just before he goes to Manchester. And the reason why they delayed was he played in a trial and a Rangers scout had watched him. And because the Celtic scout had heard this, and because of sectarianism, he said, I'm not going to go near him then, even though he was a Catholic. So then when he found out that he was a Catholic and a Celtic fan, he tried to sign him, and he was 20 minutes too late. And Busby cried because he would sign for Man City, and he had to get the train down to Manchester. So he nearly signed for Celtic.
Amazing stuff. See, on their management style, Johnny, were they just man motivators, or were they tactically good as well?
Yeah, everything. They were brilliant at everything. You know, they had to be really. You do see that Stein in particular was absolutely obsessed with the tactical side of games. I mean, Stein was going to the World Cup in Switzerland in 1953 to watch matches. He was already thinking about it in a way. But Busby was brilliant tactically, and he knew the players to sign, as was Shankly. But I think of the three, if you absolutely sort of said to me who was thinking about the game in a really modern way, I probably would say Stein. The way Celtic played at that time was extraordinary. I mean, high pressing game, quick football, get it to the box. You know, they were playing modern football at that time. I think the three of them were incredible, not just tactically, but also Archie McPherson gave me a great line for the film. He says, I've met wonderful talkers of the game, wonderful philosophers, but they haven't been able to make players stand up when they walk into a dressing room. Stein, Shankly and Busby could do that. When they walked into a dressing room, everybody stood up. That's fascinating, isn't it?
Why is that gone then? Why is that gone from modern day football? Why don't we get these managers that have got that aura and presence?
I don't know. I might say Clough would have it. Young footballer, Clough, Mourinho perhaps. I noticed in Spurs doc they're all a bit like Mourinho's come in. So there's certain ones that have got it, but they definitely had it. I don't know if you're born with it. They were all miners. They were all union men. If you worked underground, you have to be strong. You have to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to argue a point if you're in a union. They could all do that. Which is the tenets of good management. So they all have the characteristics to take that onto a football pitch, and you just respect them. That great story of Jimmy Johnston being substituted, and he kicks the side of the dressing of the dugout. So Stein chases him into the to the dressing room, and he locks himself in the toilet. All right, calm down, come out. I need to speak to you. And finally, Johnston goes, "I'm not coming out because he'll hit me." Imagine that in a modern game. Do you know what I mean? I'm not coming out, you'll hit me, Jock. So they had that where you wouldn't mess with them either. Like you said earlier on about Shankly, Stein, Busby, they could all be tough when they wanted to be. You know what I mean? They all had that ring of steel through them, which they had to have to survive their upbringing.
And they were all clever guys as well, John, outside of football as well. You could imagine all three of them running like successful businesses as well, couldn't you? Yeah,
that's it. I think, the old idea of escaping from the old industries was through the arts or football or sport. So you could either become like a boxer or a footballer, or you could become like a film star. They had that, you know what I mean? So they were like, I think they'd have been successful in any part of life, but the avenues open to them then were only football, really. It's like Busby's teacher said the boy is exceptionally bright. It's a shame he can't go on to become a school teacher, but he had to go underground because his family needed the money. I mean, Stein, Archie McPherson says he had a photographic memory. It's pretty obvious he was a bright man, that if he'd have gone into any other industry, he'd have been fighting. And Shankly was, you can see the energy of Shankly. Imagine Shankly going anywhere, in any world. Yeah. He's going to make an impression. So they were all very, very, very bright men. But unfortunately, in those days, the only avenue open to them was probably football. Oh, yeah. We've said how similar the three of them are. What would you say differed between them? Well, I mean, like you said, we've talked a little on. Busby's like kind of almost like your uncle. Do you know what I mean? He's like the father figure, put his arm around you. Shankly, I always think, is like a messiah. He kind of started a cult really in Liverpool, and Liverpool fans are still a bit like that. And they laugh and agree with this. Liverpool fans, they don't ever lose a football match. You know what I mean? It's like it's their thing. You know what I mean? And so I think with Stein was. I thought Stein fascinates me in a way because Scotland was so sectarian at the time, and he was a Protestant. And he had to become the manager of Celtic, and he lost friends because of it. And his father would never wish him good luck. He couldn't bring himself to say good luck. His own father, because his father was a Rangers man. Yeah. And that made him really, really want to be successful. And it's a great line where McPherson says, he said to him, Celtic Rangers was always his big game, because he'd gone to the other tribe, and there's nothing like a convert, as they say in the Bible. And so Stein kind of like, it became an obsession with him to become successful because of his background and where he came from. And I think that's an amazing story, really.
See, if Stein had took the Man United job when he was going to, do you think Man United would have won more European trophies than what they did? Yeah,
he'd have turned it round. But the thing was, and this is what McPherson says and I say, he was such a home bird. He just hated it. He had to be in Scotland, in Lanarkshire. Whereas Busby broke that he was terribly homesick, but he managed to stay. And Shankly came from a village which already was sort of closing down. There's nothing there in Glenbuck anymore. There's nothing left. There's almost the foundations of where they were from. So Shankly was always going to be more of a wanderer. But Stein was gripped by the soil of Lanarkshire. He just couldn't leave. He was a minor till he was in his mid-20s. He tried coming down to Llanelli to play in Wales. Didn't last very long. His wife was terribly homesick. So he was never going to leave Glasgow in this area, Stein. But I honestly think if he'd gone to Man United, he'd have turned that football club around. No two ways about it.
Mate, you could stick Busby anywhere and he would never be home. Like, he would just make it his own, wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was gonna
never see it.
No, and the thing is, when he goes to Liverpool as well, it's that great line where he says, I knew I was amongst my people. I knew I was home. I knew I had the crowd here. And the first thing he does is really clever. He gets running water into Anfield because they were a mid-table going nowhere club, Liverpool, very much in the shadow of Everton. And then he starts talking about the cop. I'm one of them and they're one of me. And if you listen to that as a football fan, you think, I'll follow this fella. And once you've got that investment, you're away. Do you know what I mean? If you win a few football matches and they're telling you we love you, then he's sorted. And like you said, Shankly, he's a right character, really, isn't he?
Yeah. You spoke about Jock Stein there. Obviously, Celtic were the first team to win the European Cup, first British team. Does that get the respect it deserves down south?
I think it does, certainly does from me. And I think I hope the film will help with that as well, because I still think it's the greatest season of any football team in football history ever. And that's my honest opinion. And you can prove that with facts as well. They won every trophy available to them. There was an exceptionally good Rangers team in that league as well, who also got to a European final that year. There was really some other really good team. Aberdeen were very strong at that time. Dundee United, there was Hearts were strong. So the domestic league was very strong. They won that. They won the cup. They won the League Cup. And then they got to Europe and they beat Inter Milan, who had one of the great teams in the mid-1960s, and went 1-0 down early doors. So everybody went, the worst thing that can happen is they go down 1-0 early, they can shut up shop, and that's it. And that's exactly what happened. So every hurdle that was put in their way, they got over it and did it. And I still think, somebody said to me the other day, I still think there's only about 3 teams that have ever won every trophy available to them. One is in Egypt, one was somewhere else. Nobody in any way like Europe, and nobody won the most difficult trophy in the world to win domestically, the European Cup, like they did. I just think even now, like that team and the way they played, and then of course there's the famous thing, they all come from within. There's the argument 12 miles or 30 miles of Parkhead, Celtic Park. But I just think it's an amazing achievement, and the players they had. It's just before the money started to affect the game, because by the early 70s, your Macaris and your Dalglish were able to go south, and Liverpool and Manchester United were able to offer them more. In the mid-60s, you could still keep the best players in Scotland, if you know what I mean. There was not enough of a disparity between the leagues. Once the league started to tip and the balance started to change, it was much more difficult for Stein to keep hold of his best players then.
It's like you saying with Stein being before his time. Like, you watch that final, mate, and one fullback's up the pitch crossing it, and the other fullback's getting on the end of it. I mean, Liverpool and that are lauded for that these days, but Celtic were doing that in 1967. And
they played with they played a passing game, and obviously they played with all the modern things, a high press and all that, which is basically chasing down other players. But it was the pace, the way they played, and also people like Johnson were just encouraged to go forward, to attack the other team. Do you know what I mean? So they were playing football, that hadn't been seen really. And there's there's all that wonderful commentary where because Inter Milan have 1-0 up, we're in the ice age of European football, and all that. And it's hard to explain. My dad used to tell me how desperate everybody was for Celtic to win that football match. Desperate, because
everyone in Britain was desperate.
Absolutely. In Wales, it was massive because of the way Inter Milan played and all that kind of stuff. So, and in those days, everybody supported. When I was a kid growing up, everybody supported what they used to call the British teams, in Europe, and that was the Irish teams as well. So, and the Welsh teams. So it was just the way it was. I think it's changed now. I think it changed kind of with Chelsea about 15 years ago when teams were owned by rich men. But just certainly in the late 70s, early 80s, especially the time, remember Dundee United and Aberdeen winning the European Cup. I mean, I can remember as a kid the houses and the pubs being packed when they played in finals, as they would have been for English teams, and Welsh teams getting the semi-finals, like Cardiff got the European Cup Winners' Cup semi-final. So there's all those things that happened. It was just a kind of a universal thing, I think, that you wanted the team that you knew from the British leagues to do really well.
See, the teams, obviously, we spoke about Wales doing so well in the Euros, having that kind of drinking culture. Would that have been similar in Busby's teams, Stein's teams, and Shankly's teams?
I think it was different from today. They all liked going out and having a pint, and they all liked, socialising. They were all really fit men. Have you seen that stuff in there? The training shot of Celtic in the early 70s, where they're all doing the sprints. I mean, they're all cut. They're all like ribs and pecs, so they all look fantastically fit. But I don't think that, the diet was slightly different than it is now, and obviously they liked a pint. But I still think they were extraordinarily fit lads. They were playing football twice a week, training all the time, so there wouldn't have been that much difference. John Robertson, talking about him, gave me a great line once. He said to me, "Do you know why football is the most popular sport in the world?" I was a bit like, "Go on," and he went, "Because you can't cheat at it." And I went, "What do you mean?" And he went, "Well, you can have bent refs and all that, but you can't take a pill to make you run faster or something, because you can't take a pill so you can shoot better or beat a man better. It's still about the skill of the individual." And I was like, "That's a really good point." He said, "You can't." He said, "You could be fitter, and you could, but he said, ultimately, to be able to pass a ball a certain way or to be able to go round somebody is a skill. It can't be cheated, And I was like, yes, good point.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, I was speaking about Stein. The current Celtic team are going to beat his record of 9 in a row, trying to get 10. Can you emphasise with the pressure that they guys are under right now?
Oh, it's massive. And you can see it, can't you? Because Celtic are creaking a little bit for the first time.
Yeah.
It's such a huge thing. I get it. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, Rangers have come stronger. Gerrard's starting to get his feet under the table, doing a good job. I'm one of them as well, because I'm outside and I can watch it. I think a strong Celtic and a strong Rangers is really important for Scottish football. Do you know what I mean? I always think it's still the greatest derby in the world, and if it's a fierce rivalry, I enjoy that more than sort of somebody else being outside the leagues or whatever. That's just my opinion, obviously. But I think this season, I think there's a long way to go. If the pressure was flipped the other way. The thing is, what could happen is football, and as you play, pressure's such a huge thing. If Rangers get a bit of a head of steam up and get a few points, fine. But say after Christmas they lose a game or two and Celtic win a game, it'll flip then, and then the pressure will be on Rangers to stop the 10 in a row. So it's a long way to go yet. At the moment, it has made it very interesting this season.
See, the media attention now that managers get, like, did Stein have to deal with that sort of scrutiny on him every single day?
Yeah, there's a bit in the film where they talk about the pressure football managers are under. I mean, it cracked the three of them in a way. Obviously Busby had the crash and all the rest of it, which was horrendous. But by the time he won the European Cup again, he finished. I mean, Stein, bless him, died, on the side of a football pitch. I was there that night in Ninian Park. And Shankly he retired and then regretted it, But, there's a moment where the three of them say the pressure on us is so huge all the time, every game. And then there's a line in the film by Johnny Giles, the ex-Leeds, an Irish player. He said, football's a unique industry. And he's talking about Jock Stein. He said, after 9 years of winning the title, he's under more pressure in the 10th year than he is in his first year, because he's got to repeat the success. And it's so true. It's like, once you're successful, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep doing it. And that's why, people like Stein and Alex Ferguson's another one, are remarkable. To win 13 Premier League titles is amazing. Because once you've won one, you think, well, I've done it. But then everybody's going, no, you got to do it again now. And then you win it again, and then you got to do it again. And then you got to do it again. And I think that's an unbelievable pressure. And they all had that.
So you were there that night in Impact with Jock Stein?
Yeah, I was. I went down to watch Wales, Scotland. And I went with my father and my grandfather. And I remember leaving, and it was transistor radios in those days, and word spreads quite quickly anyway. And my father we were walking on the back of the stand, and we overheard somebody saying Stein's ill. And Stein had played, you see, internationally, and obviously he'd been a minor, so he had a great affiliation with the Welsh fans. And my father saying, "Is that right about Stein?" And then the guy going, "He's passed away apparently." And then there was massive silence in the crowd, and the Scots were coming around the other stand with the yellow flags. And I can remember vividly now, the yellow flags stopped. They've stopped waving as word was obviously spreading. Silence, just everybody walking, 40,000 people walking. And I get in the car, we put the radio on, and the radio was just full of that story. And it had I think there was a real feeling that night that somebody important who had a real relationship and affinity with the support had passed away. And there wasn't one single arrest apparently after the game. Everybody just kind of like heads down and went home really.
Wow. All three had that with the community. So as you say, Shankly straight away wanted to make a connection with the Liverpool fans. Were you similar in making the documentary? Did you want to keep community a big theme in it?
Yeah, so I can't keep mentioning it really from the start right the way through. Busby was another one. Busby used to point to the factories of Trafford Park, as they call it, the big industrial parks, and those are the people today, and you've got to entertain them. That was his big line to the team. It's really important you entertain them. Stein, that great story of him opening the window of the dressing room, listening to the shoes, the people coming in. Don't forget them today. And Shankly obviously talking about, like, I'm one of the people on the Cop and they and me. They all had that. They all kept saying to them, it's really important you remember the fans. And it's interesting in there that, the film, when I made the film 2 years ago, it started, and now what's happened with people not being allowed in because of COVID and all the rest of it, everybody's using Stein's statement right across football. And you see people in Poland holding the banner up with the line, football's nothing without fans, and they've used it. That saying has probably become one of the most famous sayings in football now. And when Stein said that, he was bang on, really.
Do you think there was that connection as well because they wouldn't have paid that much more than what fans were like? Do you think that connection's gone now between a manager and a set of fans because they live a totally different world to what fans do?
Well, some have got it. I spoke with this. Clough knew straight away, didn't he? And he felt like the right relationship, didn't he, for a manager with a club, because of the way he'd been with Dortmund and all that kind of stuff. I think Mourinho had it a bit with Chelsea when he first went there. So, people do definitely have it.
Was it that made Scottish managers so successful, that they had that connection with fans? Like, I think in Man United, the only managers to win a European Cup with them have been Scottish. Why is that?
It's because everything's for a reason, really. They would have connected with the fans. They would have known the game inside out. They both played. This is Busby and Ferguson. They understood the city. They understood the people. They understood players. There's a lot of different things all coming together to make them brilliant at what they did. And they just knew the game inside out, back to front. They knew it tactically, man management, years of experience. You don't get to win a European Cup just by luck or chance. It's impossible. You get it by being the best that you can possibly be. And I think, there was all these things that happened that produced these great managers in Scotland, like socialist areas, industry, the football at the time. But ultimately, you've got to work hard and you've got to be intelligent. And those three men, and four with Ferguson, had them all in abundance.
But the basics of the game have no changed. And for me, like you've mentioned, all the four, Klopp has got that, and that's why he's the best just now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a mate of mine's father, he's Scottish lad actually, Dizzy from Glasgow, he said, the game's still the same, you just got to put a piece of leather in between two sticks. And how you do that, you can do it in any way you possibly want, and people have used different terms, the low block, and I'm like, what was low block when it first got about defending deep? I'm like, oh, it's defending deep. And then the high press, what's that? Closing down. So they've all been said and done a million times. Do you know what I mean? Like we were talking earlier on about the way Celtic played in 1967, now you'd say that's hugely progressive, in the way they played football. So the game doesn't change. You've got to motivate your players, you've got to be tactically aware, you've got to be fit, and you've got to know how to sort of score goals and defend, and that's the basics of the game. Clough was brilliant. Clough was obsessed, Robbo said by the end, of making the game as simple as possible. He was obsessed by it. He said he just used to say one or two things to you. He was absolutely of the opinion that the worst thing you can do is to cloud a player with too much information, too much things. He was all about creating really good habits. So he said, he ever tell you one or two things? And I was like, really? Clough? And he was going, yeah. And I was like, what was he like half time? And he went, really quiet. He'd tell you one thing at the most. So he said, I met managers and my coaches were all chippier. And he used to think, well, you cloud it. But he said, Clough was like, oh, I'll just do this, John. Make sure when you get the ball, number two will sort of come to you a little bit slow, so pass it as soon as you can. And that was it. Give you one bit of information, do you know what I mean? And I think these managers had that as well. They were men that were able to distill the complexities of football into simple instruction.
Mate, I think that's spot on, because I watch managers and coaches now and they just want to talk, information. And that's why I think we didn't produce the sort of players of John Robertson, Jimmy Johnson, because they're getting told far too much information instead of just letting them play the way they want to play football. Like you say, one or two wee bits of information here or there. Yeah,
well, I mean, mate, it fucking drives me crackers when they pull out a little, almost like a little plastic clipboard with things on the side of the pitch, and they got a player going on, and they go in. I'm like, what are you telling him that for? He knows what he's going to do. It's a great story. Graham Souness, he gets signed by Liverpool from Middlesbrough. I think the record signing for Liverpool at the time, £350,000. First game, he's in the changing room, and he says to Joe Fagan, who's next to Bob Paisley, he goes, right, what do you want me to do? And Fagan turns to Paisley and goes, fucking hell, we bought him for 350 grand, and he's asking us, what should he do? I mean, it's like, just go out and play football, son. And it's bang on, isn't it? Don't worry about it. Just go out, play your game, and you'll be fine, And I think there's a lot of that where if you can get it right, you can calm it all down and just give your instructions simply to somebody who knows how to play the game, you've got a great chance. And apparently, sort of Klopp's very much like that, I mean, you've only got to watch the Mourinho stuff with Spurs. It's really interesting. He just goes, you just need to get a bit nastier. You just need to be bastards a bit more. That's what he keeps telling them. Mate, it's simple stuff, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. That's what he keeps saying. You're a good team, you know what to play. You just need a bit more of a killer instinct. And he keeps saying it over and over and over. It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Just on the European Cup, Bill Shankly was the only one out of the three that never won it. Was that a big regret of his? Yeah, massive. And he felt he was cheated out of it in 65, wasn't it? Where he, Inter Milan famously, wasn't it? And he always talks about that. And when he retires, that's Tony Wilson asking him the questions, the guy who founded Factory Records and all that. He says to me, you never won the European Cup, Bill. And he goes, I never did anything in unfair ways, though. He felt he was cheated out of the European Cup. And it must have been a regret of his in the next 5 years for Liverpool to win 2 European Cups, because the basis of the team was still his. And everyone who says that, when they win in Rome, he turns, doesn't he, to Keegan and goes, I can't believe Bill's not here to to oversee this. So I think that's why it's very poignant when Joe Fagan says, I think he died of a broken heart. You feel that just when Liverpool were really becoming the best team in Europe by 75, he retires and you think, oh, Bill, you just missed it. Yeah, wow. So what would you say was his biggest achievement at Liverpool? Because again, I never knew that he took them in the second division. Yeah, well, he took them up really quickly. And then they win the title by 64. So he's there in 59. So within 5 years, he's taken them up and he's won a title, which is unbelievably quick to do it. And then he established them as one of the best teams in Europe then, really. So what he did, I think, Bill, was he created the dynasty. He created this idea that you go to Anfield, it's his house, you're going to have a really hard time here. And teams still have to do that. If you go to Anfield, it's very rare anybody gets a point there, let alone, wins. And I think that all comes down to Bill Shankly and his attitude. Like, this is his house, it's his place, and you can't go there and expect an easy time of it. That comes from his personality, I think, Stein's really interesting in the sense that Stein is really interesting in the sense. Sorry, man. Go on. He's instantly successful wherever he goes. I mean, I've never known anything like it. He literally goes to Celtic to do the reserves. They fly in. Then he's told he'll never have the top job because he's a Protestant. So he says, all right. So he goes to Dunfermline. He wins the cup with Dunfermline. They're beating like Valencia and Everton in Europe. Ridiculous. So Hibs get him. Within 6 months, he's taken Hibs to the top of the league. They win the Summer Cup. And at that point, Celtic go, right, we've got to get this fella in. Goes to Celtic, wins the Scottish Cup, and then he's away. So Stein, if I had a time machine, right, and I won, £1 billion on the Euro billions, right, or Euro millions, and you said to me, I can buy Merthyr and I can get one manager in, I would get the 1967 Jock Stein. I think the 1967 Jock Stein was probably the greatest football manager that ever lived, in my opinion. Wow. So would you be your pick of the three then, Jock Stein? Yeah. I just think Jock edges it for what he did in 67. I think it's extraordinary what he did in 67. Yeah. Well, just the last wee bit on Busby as well, because I like this part of the documentary, because young coaches now and young managers, they've all got this philosophy, I'm going to play this way no matter what. Shankly went into Liverpool, he never had the players to do that, so he made them horrible, didn't he? Until he could get to the level and get the players in that he wanted to then go and play nice football. Yeah. Shankly was a tough man, and Liverpool became physical and hard to beat, and still are. In the sense of, like, you don't get anything at Anfield. you know, whether it be the referee or playing against them, it's a tough place to go. Busby was all about the beautiful game, and it's really interesting to me that he wanted to play attacking wingers, you know, and great players. That's why you got the club was always going to have Best and Cantona and those kind of players. It all comes to Matt Busby. You know, he wanted to play in a very beautiful way in Man United. And, you know, they still sing in Manchester United and Old Trafford, playing football the Busby way. They still sing that there, not the Ferguson way, the Busby way, because that's the template for them. And when Mourinho went to Manchester United, my Manc mates are really interesting because they were accused of being a bit negative, do you remember? And Liverpool fans sang to them, park the bus, Man United, because they were defending. And my mates hated it. They were Mancs. It made them squirm because that's not Man United. They were like, we're Man United. We're meant to play attacking, progressive football. And that's all because of Matt Busby.
Again, mate, there's so many connections to modern day football. Busby leaves Man United in the struggle for years, and now we're seeing it again when Ferguson leaves. Man United are on the same sort of struggle that they were back then.
It's huge, isn't it? It just goes to show how important football managers are. I still say this, and that's what the point of the film was. The most important person in a football club is always the manager. It's always the manager. Because they set the tone for everything, really. You know, they pick, you know, ultimately they pick the players, they coach them, but also like the philosophy of a club and what the club is and what it's about. And if you get somebody like a Ferguson, who's a once-in-a-generation manager, as we knew, it's really difficult to find somebody else like him. Because, you know, the club, I mean, Liverpool were interesting because Shankly gets replaced by Paisley, and then Paisley gets replaced, and it's a slow progression down until they get Clough, who's picked them back up again. And Celtic, you know, Celtic have never going to have a manager as good as Jock in the game. But O'Neill was close. People would say got to European final and all the rest of it, you know, and had that affinity with the fans. Do you know what I mean? But it's so difficult to find a manager who's anything like, you know, the great managers. And it's a problem for football clubs. And Manchester United, as you say now, have got a problem. How do you find the person to replace Alex Ferguson? You can't.
Take them out.
Say it again.
Eventually. Do you think they'll find Jeff? Do you think they'll get back on top, Man United?
Yeah, only because it might take even 5-10 years. But like Liverpool, they're so big because of the men. It's almost cyclical. They'll get back up again. It's a bit like Rangers doing now, you know what I mean? And then Celtic will do the same. Yeah. If you're a massive football club with your roots in those kind of things, in the end, somebody will come and there will be somebody who will say, because the foundations are there, the support's there. The stadiums there. People will always want to go and play for Manchester United, Liverpool and Celtic because of what they've achieved. You'll always be able to get players to go and play there. So, you know, there's always the potential for these clubs to get back to what they are. They just need to get the person in that can realise that potential. And a great example is Clough. Clough goes to Liverpool. Everybody kind of goes, that's a good fit. Takes him 2 or 3 years. They're patient with him. And he's finally got them firing. So it will happen. It's just finding that person. It should have been Guardiola. We all know that. But because of the money of Man City, they've got Man United's manager. The way they play and the way he thinks the game and the way he wants to play, we all feel in our hearts he should be at Man United and they should be competing against Liverpool with Clough. But money, unfortunately, is taking him to Man City. Well, not unfortunately, because Man City fans love him. But money's taking him to the other half of Manchester, ironically. But you do feel somebody like Pep Guardiola would have been a great Manchester United manager against Clough and with those two clubs behind them.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's a feel-good documentary, mate. I really enjoyed it, as I said. The one, obviously, harrowing bit is the Munich air disaster. Like, how harrowing was it? See, when you look at it, how horrible was that time and that situation?
Yeah, it was a dreadful thing. It made me admire Busby even more, the fact that, like, he came back and he won a European Cup 10 years later. It's an amazing story when you think of it. When I tell you know. But what I found more about doing the film was how loved the Babes were by everybody. These are the days before, you know, football became much more partisan. But how much they were the country's team, the Babes. You know, they were young men. They were just coming out of the war. You know, they were like rationing had ended. They had quiffs. They looked young. They had the big V. So they were like, everybody felt like, you know, rock and roll was starting. A great affinity with them. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I realised. It was snatched away from the country, really. It wasn't just Manchester United. It was the whole country had this young football team they all loved, who were travelling Europe and beating the best in Europe, was suddenly all killed in a plane crash. It must have been horrendous to experience. And I can't even imagine what Busby must have gone through, considering, you know, they were his boys that he brought through from young players. And, you know, like they say in the film, he couldn't even face football again for a few months. He couldn't even think about it. But he went back because his wife, another Scots girl, she said to him, you owe it to the players who survived and the boys who were still coming through to get back to football. And it shows the size of the man and the moral courage of Busby that he was able to go back and do that. He's an amazing man, really.
And then he gets Bobby Charlton and then George Best. The bit that made me laugh in the film was when Jack Charlton and Bobby Charlton are getting filmed and they're playing football with jumpers and shirts on. I think they're outside their house.
Yeah, up in Ashington, which is a mining community. Amazing, wasn't it? And they signed like the best young player in the country because of the scouting system here. They signed Bobby Charlton, and obviously Jack goes to Leeds. It's a great shot of them playing, and they playing with little kids in the field.
Kids in the street, yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
I want to ask about one more player, mate. George Best.
Yeah.
Like, would he have been Busby's favourite ever player?
I think he was, really. I mean, Duncan Edwards was his player, but he died, bless him. He loved Duncan Edwards, didn't he? But Best, and see, this is what happened. People say that he'd become softer, really, after the air disaster, in the sense of like he found it difficult to sort of like to reprimand players and all that because he'd seen boys die. So a lot of people say he was very soft on George. Obviously, George was a great player. He loved him. But like in the maybe 10 years, 15 years before, he'd have said the best about his going out and his drinking. He'd have been on him. He kind of forgive him a lot. He apparently used to say this thing, he'd go, "That's only George. He'll be fine Saturday." So he became quite soft, and he loved Best in a special way, I think, and indulged him, really. You know what I mean? Allowed him to do what he wanted to do. And Best was never the same after Busby retired. He was never really that bothered about playing football in the same way he was under Busby. He was always Busby's boy, and that was it, really. And what they achieved together in 4 years was remarkable, from 64 to 68. But Best was a young man. Even then, he was only 24, 25, I think, winning the European Cup. So he felt as if he had a long career. Well, the following year, Busby retired, and then he was only fitting back in and out. He was never the same player, but I think Busby had a real soft spot for Best.
That's what I love about it as well, mate, the connection with their players as well. I don't think managers have that personal connection with players anymore.
No, it's like if I could think of the three players that personify them to me, if I picked the three. With Liverpool, Shankly loved Keegan because Keegan became the best player he could possibly be. You know what I mean? He trained hard and he worked hard. And there's that great bit where he goes, "I don't give the gospel to Kevin Keegan. Kevin Keegan knows the gospel." And I was a bit like... so you could see Shankly loved Keegan in a very special way because he reminded him of him, that he worked really hard and he trained hard. Busby, as we said, loved Best. Just loved Georgie Best because he was flair and he could play and all that. And Stein absolutely adored Jimmy Johnson. He just did. There's a great story of when they played Dukla Prague, didn't they, in the semi-final, and he says to him, because he hates flying, Jimmy Johnson. So he says, "Well, I won't take you to the return leg. You play in the first leg," because he has a stormer. And he says, "I still got to take you, Jimmy, because he might just as insurance." But he's like, he loved him, and he brought the best out of him, and he kind of forgive Jimmy sometimes where Jimmy liked a pint and all the rest of it. We all know the stories. But he was like, as long as he turns up and he trains and works hard, I don't care. And there's a great story that he's heard Jimmy's been out all day drinking and he doesn't say nothing. So he works Jimmy really hard in his training session. And of course, Jimmy is the best trainer in the session. Literally, nobody can live with him. And I love those relationships because that's how you win trophies, by man management like that. There's some players that you have to look after in a certain way because they're going to give you special things, and the three of them knew it and treated those players accordingly.
And Clough's the same with Robertson, isn't it? It's another example.
Loved him. He said he was his favourite player. He said this great line once. He said, "I managed a lot of great players. I was very lucky, but it was a little fat guy from Scotland who won me 2 European Cups."
Amazing. Last question, mate. Would you confidently say that these three, the clubs wouldn't be anywhere they are today without the three?
Yeah, I do. I honestly think that they kind of made the three clubs in the modern sense. What they did was they made them international football clubs. Now, Celtic were always a different proposition because they were, they had the religious side of it and, the Irish side. But ultimately, I think Manchester United and Liverpool and Celtic are worldwide renowned football clubs with fan groups and people all over the planet because of the three men. That's my honest opinion.
Would they three ever hang a bit together? Would they ever go for drinks or a meal together while they were managing the three big clubs?
Yeah, they socialised quite a lot. They always, and the Shankly's granddaughter told me they were always on the phone to each other. They were always like, sort of, Shankly would turn up at Busby's office. Shankly was always having to be calmed down by Busby. He was almost like his older brother going, come on now, Bill, because he'd be angry because the board had rejected a player. And the same with Stein, like Busby was desperate to get Stein there after him. He'd seen him as the guy to sort of carry on at United, the work he'd been doing. And it's really interesting to me that the three of them were close friends, but fierce rivals. I mean, they desperately wanted to beat each other. That game where Celtic lose to Liverpool and in the European Cup, I think it is, Ian St. John said to me, Celtic fans still have a go at me about a goal. It was a disputed goal, to this day. And, but Stein and Shankly, there's a photograph of them talking after them in the stand, and they're still great mates. But, during the game, they would have been like, they'd been desperate to beat each other. Desperate.
Johnny, amazing. I enjoyed the chat, enjoyed the documentary. It's amazing. Everyone get out and see it, download it. It's a tremendous documentary. I loved it, mate.
Thank you very much, and God bless Scotland. Big love to you all.
Top man, cheers, mate.
Top boys, thanks, lads.